literally one night, Wendy, I thought it was almost like I could hear Sashi speaking to me late at night. And she said, I'll help you. And so it was like the spirit and the guidance of Sashi was reaching down and saying, well, I'll help you with this little puppy.
Hello and welcome to Hey Boomer, the show for those of us who believe that we are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. My name is Wendy Green and I am your host for Hey Boomer. And I have a question for those of you who have pets. Have you ever learned any lessons from your pets? Now, I have to tell you about my cat, Pepper. She's very smart. And Pepper, I have trained her to be able to shake paws, shake hands, and occasionally she'll lie down and sometimes she'll give me some sugar for a treat. So I'm very proud of Pepper. And, you know, people say cats can't learn, but definitely she does. But what about dogs? Dogs are easily trained, right? People train their dogs to do all kinds of things. But my question is really, what have you learned from your pets? So when I was young, we had a sheepdog. His name was Curly. And Curly taught us about safety and emotions and how to play. I mean, he was really an amazing dog. I think he was a human in a dog's body. But Pepper teaches me to stop work. I can sit there in front of my computer for way too long and she'll come in, she'll bring a toy or she'll jump up on the desk or she'll jump up on my lap and say, Mama, I need some time. And it reminds me I need to get up and walk away. So there are things that we can learn from our pets. In the book we're going to talk about today, Tales from Tibet, little Tashi learns many lessons that are shared with the reader, typically like a 7 to 12-year-old. But I want to know from Philip Martin, my guest, what he has learned from Tashi and from his journey to becoming an author. But just a few announcements before I bring Philip on. First of all, 40% of Americans have a hard time swallowing pills. Are you one of them? I know I hate to swallow pills. So luckily, Easy Melt has discovered a way to create vitamins that melt in your mouth, taste like a treat, and are packed with nutrients ready for absorption, all without an ounce of sugar. For a limited time, Easy Melts is giving Hey Boomer listeners a free 3-month supply of vitamin D3, which you know is important for all of our health, with your first purchase. So to claim your free supply of vitamin D3, visit try.easymelts.com/heyboomer. Another direction, if you are new creative ideas excite you, check out Annie's Kit Club. They deliver creativity right to your mailbox. You will get a new shipment every month with supplies and instructions to make something beautiful, whether you like crocheting or knitting or quilting or a variety of different crafts. All you need to do to get 50% off your first order from Annie's Kit Club is go to Annie's Kit Clubs with an S, annieskitclubs.com, and enter the promo code BOOMER at checkout. I also want to thank Doris McLallen for becoming a Boomer believer. Doris wrote, I have been a huge fan and supporter of Wendy and Hey Boomer since its very beginning. Thank you, Doris. And you too can become a Boomer believer or a member of the Boomer Banter. Your support means so much to me and really helps me keep the show going. So you can go to buymeacoffee.com/HeyBoomer0413 to join. I will read your comments on upcoming shows, and all of these links will be in the show notes. All right, looks like we have a great audience, Philip, so let me bring you on. Hello, Philip.
Hello, Wendy.
So I want to start by saying that Philip is my friend. We met in Northern Virginia when I was living in Leesburg, and both of us were in the Rotary Club. I know Philip to be a can-do type of person, full of enthusiasm and optimism. Professionally, Philip has extensive experience in executive coaching and as a management consultant. He also has 50 plus years of sales experience, from hands-on selling to training and coaching. Philip is a native of Nashville, Tennessee. He received his BA from Birmingham Southern College and then his MBA from Owen School of Management at Vanderbilt University. He and his beautiful wife, Donna, live in Ashburn, Virginia with Tashi, their Tibetan Terrier, who is featured in his new children's book, gorgeous book, Tales from Tibet. Philip, do you have Tashi with you today?
Wendy, I do.
Oh, let's meet little Tashi for just a moment. Oh my goodness, look at that face. Tashi, you are a star of the book.
This is Tashi, 2.5-year-old Tibetan Terrier, everyone.
Tell me about the Tibetan Terrier breed.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's a pretty hidden breed out of about 140 plus breeds of dogs. It was only sort of stayed up in the Himalayas for several thousand years with the Buddhist monks. And it was only discovered in 1926 by a British doctor. A woman doctor treated a Tibetan family, and they gave the doctor, who loved dogs, they gave the woman doctor a puppy, and it was a strange looking breed with the hair down. You see them in the dog shows, the hair hanging down, and couldn't see her or the eyes, and they'd never seen the dog before. The doctor never had. So the doctor took the little puppy down to Delhi, India, to a dog show, and they didn't know what to do, what to name it. So they called it a terrier. It's not a terrier, but they named it the Tibetan Terrier, sent it back to be bred again, to come back as a purebred. So in 29, I believe it became the pure breed in the world. And then two women in London area started breeding them. And it still stayed pretty quiet under the radar. It started being more popular in Europe and has remained very popular in Europe. And then the first one landed in America in Great Falls, Virginia in 1955.
Not too far.
Not too far away from here. And then the oldest Tibetan Terrier Club is the Mount Vernon Tibetan Terrier Club here in our area. And that's sort of the story of it. There's only about 800 born a year in America, I believe.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So it's that'll be a part of the story as we get into our conversation, because they're somewhat rare and somewhat very special. They're called the magical dog of Tibet, and the Tibetan people call them little people. So it's
little people. Well, yeah, and I'm so glad we got to meet Tashi. She's so pretty. So tell me, Philip, what inspired you to write a children's book? I mean, you've been working with adults in business all your life.
Right. And somebody asked me the other day in an interview, we didn't have children ourselves. We've got a lot that we look after and take care of in our extended family, but Donna and I never have had children, and yet I was one. So even though we didn't have them ourselves, I was as a young boy. I had a little dog, and then later I had a dog. But it dawned on me when Donna and I began. We got Sashi, and I want to tell you a little about. So Sashi, for those of you that haven't, Sashi is black and white Tibetan Terrier. So this was our first dog. We got her in 2012, and this was sort of the background of the book, because we got her at 6 months old, and the woman that we got her from was planning to show her Sashi's mother and brother in Russia on the dog circuit and the show circuit. So she was really being prepared to be a real show dog around the world. And the woman decided that maybe she wasn't quite big enough and that she would let us buy her. So we got Sashi, but we got her at 6 months old. So that's like she hadn't been around humans or hadn't been around other dogs for, it's like taking a 4-year-old home from the hospital or something, you know. So we missed all of that early development, nurturing and caring. So we started a lot of training and remedial work, and it developed little Sashi into a wonderful, sort of like the daughter I never had. And so we really, it was quite a father-daughter relationship. And then, as I said, the breed lives to about 18 or 19 years old. So out of all the dog breeds, it's one of the longest living breeds of all. And then surprisingly, sadly, Sashi got lymphoma and at 8 years old. So we went through prayer and counseling and what to do and started a lot of oncology treatments. But she didn't make it. And it wasn't, we've all had, a lot of your listeners, we've all had pets and all, but it was just the premature death. When I had planned on her living so much longer, and to have her pass away at 8, it just rocked my world. And
devastating. Yeah.
So that's the background, is that I began to think that losing Sashi, and then I was going through the whole grieving process. I'd hired a grief counselor. This was all during the COVID period. So we were all working remotely and trying, but struggling. And I was struggling. And Donna had reached out to several breeders. And as I mentioned, there's only about 800 born a year. So you have to get on a waiting list. And it was like months before we would really be thinking about getting another dog. And I didn't know how soon, the timing, you know, what's the right time. But as God sort of stepped in and felt that we needed to fill that hole up a little bit. So we got Tashi came to us because of a cancellation. A family had ordered and then had some situations in their family and they needed to cancel their order. So the breeder reached out to Donna and we got Tashi a month after Sashi's passing. So,
oh my gosh,
it was during that time that I began to think, here I had an 8-year-old that had just passed away. And now I had a 9-week-old. And literally one night, Wendy, I thought it was almost like I could hear Sashi speaking to me late at night. She said, "I'll help you." And so it was like the spirit and the guidance of Sashi was reaching down and saying, "Well, I'll help you with this little puppy." So that's the beginning. And then I started thinking, well, what a little puppy could learn from an 8-year-old is the same thing I think what a little boy and little girl can learn. And so I had a couple folks that had followed me on Facebook for years, and they said, you always write some uplifting posts and encourage folks, and you're very positive. But several of them said, I think you need to write something about your dogs. And so it all came together, and that's how it came about.
Yeah. And it was fun following the development of this, Philip. As you were putting the book together, you created something you called the Tashi Chronicles.
Right.
The website you said will be up in July, but you know, following you on Facebook, I kept seeing Tashi talking to us about, you know, what she's doing and her experiences. And it was really so much fun to watch that. As we started the show, I said, what have people learned from their pets? So my question to you is, what have you learned from having Sashi and Tashi?
Well, so many times we see in mailings, we've all seen the plaques about unconditional love. We see what it's like to people talk about, regardless of how bad their day is, they come home and they're greeted by a dog who sort of loves you regardless. And I've got one of my most precious gifts, a family gave to me, that said, be the man that your dog thinks you are. And there's a lot to that.
There's a lot to that. Yeah. Dogs, definitely. Cats,
So
not so much.
So my focus outside of cats or something else, my focus is about dogs. And what I began to think about is we can learn a lot. We watch them develop. We watch the Tibetan Terrier has a stubborn streak. So I have to learn if I've got a stubborn streak, and I've been told I do. There's a lot of aspects that we have in our own development that carry over, and how you correct them and how you train and how you work with those behavioral aspects, I think can apply to people as well.
Yeah, I think so too. So I'm curious, Philip. I mean, writing a book, it's one thing to write a blog or a post on Facebook, but writing a book, that's a big endeavor. Can you talk me through from the beginning, kind of how you even got started and how you found a publisher and your fabulous graphic person?
Thank you. The illustrator, people are just, I'll take them in that order, is that I've been told or been asked over my years in business and consulting. I've always had a passion for leadership and leadership development. And a lot of people had encouraged me to write a book about leadership, but there are thousands and tens of thousands of books written every year on leadership, and that I just didn't feel inclined to sort of get thrown into that mix until this dog story came along. And all of a sudden, I began to think that a young boy, there's a segment of children, and I reflected back on my Boy Scout days. So what I learned as a Boy Scout of the Scout law of trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. The 12 tenets of the Scout law began to weave into this book, because most of those are things that I needed this puppy to learn, and that I had learned them 60 years ago. So I started bringing them together, and a friend of mine who has been a friend now for 50 years introduced me. He's a writer and does some motivational speaking. And so he introduced me to Tracy Jones, the CEO of Tremendous Life Books. And so instead of being self-published, which is very popular right now, I was blessed and so fortunate to have a publisher put me under their wing for Tremendous Life Books. So I have them to thank, and then they provided.
And didn't you tell me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but didn't you tell me that you first submitted a draft to them and they're like, no, you got to redo this?
No, so once this all began in June of 2021. So everybody thinks back where we were with COVID and where we were coming out of all of this and dealing with a new way of living and getting along. So all of this, I meet the publisher and their staff at Tremendous Life Books in June of 2021. And by this time I had been writing of what I thought was going to be something I was very proud of it. And it was a whole story that a lot of what I'm referencing here, I was describing what Tashi was telling the story, and Tashi was describing what she had been learning. And I sent this like 4,000 words or something to the publisher, and we arranged this Zoom call, and they got on the phone with me and just destroyed it all. They tore it all up, and it was a little discouraging.
Yeah, I bet it was.
So one of the lessons I learned is that just like what Tashi learns to be patient and persevere, I had to back up and regroup. Now, they not only did they send me back to the drawing board, but they did provide the guidance. So they said, a couple of things. They said, you need some adventure. You're teaching good things, but children won't read it.
Right.
And
Right.
so they won't be interested in it. So lo and behold, Donna's cousin came up with the idea one day. She called and she said, I think these two dogs are on a magic carpet, or maybe they're on an eagle, the wings of an eagle.
Oh, she said that.
So that's how the eagle
All
comes into
right.
being. And because the first thing I wrote, though, the dogs were right here just thinking about where they came from. And
Oh,
all of a sudden, the eagle is going to transport them magically to Tibet. So everything is set in Tibet, whereas the whole first draft was Tashi learning here locally about what and thinking about where they have come from, but no going to Tibet. And now,
so which is such a beautiful part of
yeah,
the story, Philip, because not only are you teaching some of these life lessons, leadership lessons, but you're also giving kids an insight into life in Tibet, which,
I've had
that's such a foreign place. They would never have that.
I've had more people now. This is just the sixth week that since the book launched on Amazon, it's setting all kinds of records. I'm just touched and barely astonished. But in the response, the feedback that I'm hearing, many take from the lessons that they can teach their grandchildren or themselves. But I'm hearing also, second to these little lessons and tips for life lessons, I'm hearing about people learning about another magical part of the world. So
Right.
they learn about a new breed of dogs. They learn about the culture of people up in the
Yeah.
Himalayas. So, and then the colors. There's something about the colors that come to life up in that part of the world, have made it all very special. And then your question about the illustrators. So
Yeah.
the crowning part of this, and I'd be glad to talk with any of your listeners later about. I reached out through a new platform called Upwork, where I pushed out that I was looking for an illustrator and said I envisioned about 25 illustrations and described I was thinking about watercolors. I had about 40 responses in an hour from
Oh
all over the
gosh.
world, and I began to interview them, and I began to get down to finalists, and I sent pictures to three finalists of Sashi and Tashi. I said it's very important that you be able to draw and paint the dogs as they are, because the Tibetan Terrier is a very unique look. And I found a young woman, 26 years old, in Lublin, Poland. And so we have developed a wonderful friendship, over 2,000 correspond, I mean, back and forth over 2,000 times. There's now 60 illustrations in the book of watercolors, and people are about wanting to buy just the illustrations now.
I'm telling you, it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the Tales from Tibet story. I think anybody that has a grandchild from, I don't know what, Philip, maybe from age 5 up
Yeah,
to about 12.
we spoke to 55 first graders in DC. Took Tashi and Donna and I downtown, and they were like 6 years old. They were tons of questions, but it's
Yeah.
really designed by 7 to 12, something about that age group. But some 6 years old, they're really picking up on it, and
The pictures are gorgeous.
it's just
Absolutely
amazing.
gorgeous. I think the other thing is, you have the lessons titled, but there's more than just a lesson in each chapter, so you might say it starts with trust or being courageous or perseverance, but that's not the only lesson in that chapter.
Right.
And I feel like, if my grandchildren were still young enough, they all, they're teenagers, they know everything now. But if they were still young enough, I could read one chapter and we could have a discussion for days, really, about some of the things that you talk about in that chapter.
It's wonderful to hear that from you, Wendy. I'm hearing that from all over, that just one chapter, and people are getting a lot of conversations out of it with among their family, and the illustrations by themselves are giving people a lot to talk about. And when we spoke to this first graders, they were raising hands saying, they said, is it real? They saw these illustrations and they began to think that they really had gotten on the wings of an eagle and flown.
Yeah.
It just made it come to life. And they over and over again, these little first graders said, how did the artist make them look so realistic? So it's really been a joy.
It was a good combination of the two of you. You know, she made it look real, but you gave their personalities. You know, you brought that out and you made them real too. And little little Tashi, you could see her getting frustrated, like when she's trying to cross this log, and she's like, I just want to make it easy. I just want to do it.
I know.
Yeah.
And even that one, let's take that story just for a moment. That's my favorite chapter. And when they try to cross this stream, and so Tashi has seen, we think of this, of those listeners, we've all had other people at our age that do better, that made better. They were more successful in business. They were something that, and we compare ourselves, and we shouldn't, but it's just human nature. It's the same way with Tashi. Tashi remembers dogs that she had seen that could be more agile. They could go across the logs. They were faster. They could jump higher. And so that was a little frustrating. She tried to get across the log and falls in the water. So she had to not only see that she wasn't as adept and athletic as some of her friends back home, but she had to get back up and try it again. So that lesson there means that it's natural to compare ourselves to others. She had to learn not to do that she was unique. Second is that she fell in the water and that was disappointing. So now she had a little pride to deal with and she had to get back up. There you go. She had to get back up and try it again. And then they had to practice. So there's a chapter just on practicing.
Yeah.
Even to get beyond the disappointment and the persevering, now they practice. And here's something that we found, Wendy, you remember this from your coaching business. A lot of times today in business, we forget to celebrate. We get so excited. We get on to the next project, or we finish up on budget, or whatever the metrics are that are driving us, but teams are forgetting to celebrate. So I added a separate section on that chapter when the two dogs are able to get across the stream on the log. They had to pause for a minute. It's sort of giving thanks. It's being grateful, but it's celebrating. So they could just celebrate for the moment and then get on with their journey.
And that's what I love about this book, Philip. I mean, you brought in lessons that we've learned in our 70 years. You've brought in lessons that you learned as a scout.
Yeah.
And in that one chapter, there's perseverance, and there's not comparing yourself, and there's celebration, and there's practice. And I mean, how exciting is this?
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're getting ready to do this website, the Tashi Chronicles. Yeah. What is that going to involve?
Well, it's going to be an umbrella, the Tashi Chronicles. I encourage any of your listeners on my Facebook, on my personal Facebook, you can find the Tashi Chronicles, and we're doing about 50 episodes to date on the Tashi Chronicles, and that will begin to be the next series of books. So there's going to be the stories of more adventures of Tashi and Sashi under the umbrella of the Tashi Chronicles. So Tales from Tibet is really the first offering of the Tashi Chronicles. So there will be another book that we'll be proceeding with in the near future. And then there are sort of speaking engagements and things, some people wanting to come in and speak to their teams, using the book sort of as a leadership tool.
In business.
So a lot of, just as you were so astute to capture it, again, what we've learned from dogs, we can apply to our teams. We can apply to our small groups. So several organizations I'm in conversation with to come in almost as a speaker there in a leadership consulting, but wrapping it around, learning from the dogs and learning from what they do. And the eagle. The eagle, again, the wise eagle flying overhead. There's a lot of imagery when you think about that. The eagle of being able to watch over them. And we all probably have somebody in our life that is sort of watching over us, or we have an entity that sort of we look toward to sort of give us the guidance. And that's, again, the symbolism of the eagle in our life that is sort of always present and always there, keeping us okay. So there is the Tashi Chronicles is going to become the ongoing, like I say, the umbrella under which these different things will be included. And so that's the
story. So you all follow Philip on Facebook. I will put your link to that in the show notes too. So what inspires you or motivates you every day, Philip?
Well, you've known me now 12 years, and it's always a quest of being better. I guess it's like a lot of some of your presenters and guest speakers have all been about being a continuous learner. I can reinforce what a lot of your presenters and guest speakers have talked about: never being too old to learn, being hungry to learn, staying curious. These are, again, chapters in the book, but they apply to us I'm 72 now. So to be able to do this at 72 is pretty, that by itself is a story that you can let others know that you're never too old.
To write a children's book. You're never too old to write a children's book.
So that's I'm at a point in my life, I guess, that season. I've heard some of your presenters talk about their seasons of life, and I'm in a more of a giving back, more serving than continuing to try to sharpen I'm not trying to sharpen the saw and as much as I once did, but it was pretty much my mantra for years, is just to continue living every day to the fullest, trying to become better in every aspect of my life. And so I've been big on trying to hone my strengths and working on my weaknesses and shortcomings. And so I've had years of working that. And now I'm at a chapter where I do feel called to be serving and giving back more. So I think that's the next part of this.
I appreciate that, although I have always seen you as a servant leader. So
thank you.
Yeah. So you've always also been a coach. In fact, you coached me for a while. So you've always been a coach and an advisor. I wonder if there has been someone in your life that has given you some advice, that has been your coach and advisor.
It's so wonderful. Yes, I mentioned earlier in our interview that the gentleman who I've known for 51 years now was my first manager in college. I worked during the summers. I sold Bibles with the Southwestern Company from Nashville, Tennessee. I sold Bibles door to door.
That had to be hard.
It was hard. It's hard one summer, and most, so you don't quit. You learn about perseverance. You learn a whole lot going door to door. I've heard a lot of no and dealt with a lot of rejection, but to learn it at 17, I started when I was 18, and then it was crazy to do it one summer, but I did it for 6 summers.
Oh my.
So I did it through college and up through graduate school and recruited students at 15 other colleges. So at 20 years old, I was under this tutelage of a gentleman by the name of David Dean. And he has been, if I had to think of probably the first mentor in my life, was David Dean, who I met when I was a sophomore in college, and we've remained friends now for 51 years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And he was the inspiration that said, look, he said, you need to write a book. And he's the one that introduced me. He's the one that introduced me to Tremendous Life books.
I think he's listening too. I think I saw him.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, David, if you're on, leave us a comment. Let us know you're here. Yeah. So that's beautiful to have had that in your life, somebody that you're still friends with 51 years later. Wow.
I've had
That's
coaches.
fantastic.
Second to that, I think my coaches, I had a couple good coaches in high school that, and my scoutmaster I mentioned, some of those really stand out as men that were really guiding me and inspiring me over the years.
Yeah. So looking back over the last couple of years, losing Sashi, being inspired to write this book, writing it and seeing it in print now, what advice or what takeaways would you leave for people listening to the show?
It's never, as we've said, it's never too late. Uh, this was a labor of love. That what it resulted in was not what it set out to be. So I had a tendency for the first time in my life. I believe in some of the Covey principles of sort of beginning with the end in mind. But in this case, I didn't know what the end would be. I was just writing from my heart. So I encourage any of your listeners uh, to just start somewhere. I did find great solace in writing things down. So and again, there's now you can record things. I recorded a lot of the book by walking around and just talking into this. There's a record app that then it sends it over to India, and it was transcribed and sent back to me in the next 10 hours. So there's so many tools that we have now to take thoughts out of our head, get them down on paper, and I encourage all of your listeners and viewers to just try that. It may coming out of that, it might seed both a writing desire. There could be some poetry. There could be some painting. This illustration thing, what I saw with this young woman who had never painted a dog, who had never dealt with me, and about which so she learned a lot. 2,000 interactions on using the WhatsApp. We live by WhatsApp and seeing dogs and imagine. So she had proposed 25 illustrations, and we end up with 60 illustrations, and all of them are more grand than she had ever dreamt. So this exceeded her dreams. So the message here is that the dreams are there. It's like let it flow, let it open up. Don't put any lid on anything because you just don't know, and just allow it to grow and open up. Never did I dream that this book would be what it looks like.
Yeah.
I had an idea once I'd been living with it for 2 years, but until I'm holding it, and then I'm seeing the 60 illustrations all together in this beautifully bound cover, it's only that moment that I realized that we had something here. Up until then, I knew I was excited about it, but I just say the lessons are just reach out there, keep thinking of something to touch, and be thinking about who you can impact. I just kept thinking if I was a little boy, I would love this. So it ended up, it never was really what I was writing. It was more what I was reading.
It was the gift you were giving to young Philip.
So I was thinking, this is what I wish I'd had. So this is what I wish that Donna and I had this book when we were starting out. So it's like it was reverse. It's not. I never once remembered saying, "This is what I think you should know." Mm-hmm. It was more, "This is what I wish I had learned." I was learning it. And the dog, it was different than me describing to a reader what I think they should be learning. But when they're hearing it from the dogs, it all comes together. And the publisher said that, the editor said that. They're not going to listen to me, but they will listen to these dogs. So
that's right.
That's saying to us that there's a message right there.
Great takeaways. Great. Your enthusiasm, Philip, is just so contagious. I love that. I love that you came onto the show to share the tales from Tibet with us. Anybody that has grandkids that are in the 6 to 12-year-old age group, I highly recommend it. You will love the images. You will love the stories and the conversations this will bring to your kids. Let me show people how they can reach out to you. So if you have specific questions for Philip, he is graciously saying you can email him at pmartin@thetashchronicles.com. And if you'd like to follow him on Facebook so that you'll know when the Tashi Chronicles website is available, you can follow him at Philip Lawrence Martin on Facebook.com. So check him out. He's one of my dear friends.
Wendy, can I add one more thing?
Sure.
For your listeners, one thing that I wanted to remind them of that Amazon has this category, children mindfulness, and the Tales from Tibet has remained at the top of that category for the first 6 weeks that it's been launched, and that's really unheard of. So there's a category, children mindfulness, and think about that. That topic.
Yeah.
That phrase, the children mindfulness, applies to a lot of what we've been discussing through our whole interview together. But this category on Amazon has kept Tales from Tibet really at the top of that. I saw the other day that people in 14 countries have already bought copies of Tales from Tibet. So we're really getting some momentum and some visibility. But
well, congratulations, Philip.
Today helps a lot. So we're getting the word out, Wendy.
Well, congratulations for putting together such a beautiful book and sharing it with us. Okay, so next Monday is July 3rd. And so I will not be doing a show because, it's right before the 4th and people will be traveling. So I won't be doing a show then. And then the following Monday, July 10th, I will be on the Windjammer cruise with my grandson, Alex. That's a Rhodes Scholar trip. So we will not be able to do a show from there. But on the 17th, July 17th, I'm going to do a solo show and I'm going to talk about transitions and some of the making sense of some of the changes that we go through in life and the difference as I see it between changes and transitions. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be July 17th. Go ahead and claim your free supply of Easy Melts Vitamin D3 with your first order. Visit try.easymelts.com/heyboomer. Or if you are into crafts, go to annieskitclubs.com, enter promo code BOOMER, and you will get 50% off your first order. And remember that you too can become a Boomer believer or a member of the Boomer Banter and support the work that I'm doing here on Hey Boomer by going to buymeacoffee.com/heyboomer0413 to join. All of that will be in the show notes. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you so, Wendy.
Yeah, I like to always leave the audience with the belief that we can all live with courage, live with relevance, and live with curiosity. And remember that we are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. My name is Wendy Green with Philip Martin, and this has been Hey Boomer.